Okay, so the diagram says how apple juice is produced. There are stages given 1, 2, all the way up to 10. Okay, no, we have 11 stages. Great. There are words here. Well, if you're thinking what this is, today's video is exactly on that. This is an example of a process diagram. Now, you can see that it has lots and lots of information given, right? So let's talk about describing a process diagram. When you have information given in the form of an image and it follows a process, in this case, it is the production of apple juice. You can see different steps or stages. Sometimes these stages or steps are numbered. Certain images, they wouldn't be numbering. How do you write a report? Well, this is an IELTS academic task 1 question type, and let's deal with this in detail. Here on screen, we have an example. It shows harvesting, then we have olive mill, olive paste, storage tank, virgin oils. So it looks like this image is talking about the production of olive oil. So this is a type of a mechanical process. Look at another example here. Again, there are so many tiny images. Images of vehicles, images of an animal here, animal feed. So oranges, great. So we understand this is about production of fresh orange juice. Packaging, shops, factory. This is also an example of a mechanical process diagram. Let's look at this one. Well, we have an egg stage given, larval stage, pupal stage, and adult stage. Okay, so from eggs to caterpillar to migration south, emergence of adult, okay, to an adult butterfly. This is also an example of a process. But the difference between this question and the samples we saw earlier is that those that we saw initially were examples of mechanical process. And this is an example of a life cycle. This is how an adult butterfly is born, right? From the egg stage to the various stages it goes through to reach the adult stage. So life cycle is another possible question in a process diagram. Wow, this is another example. Well, we understand that this is the life cycle of an adult fish. It begins with the eggs, goes on to embryo, larva, fry, fingerling stage, and then to the adult stage. Great. What about this question? It says the rock cycle. So it does not involve life as such, but it is a process. So this is an example of a natural process like the rock cycle. So we have various types of processes that we've just seen. So in your IELTS writing task 1, what are the different types of processes that you have to be prepared with? There are ideally 3 main types. The first one being the mechanical process. Now, in the mechanical process, it is like we saw the production of something. Orange juice, olive oil. We saw the production of um, maybe it could be, in the question it could be the production of bricks, production of chocolate, anything. Okay, so it could be a mechanical process. That's one type you have to be familiar with. The second is a life cycle, like we saw in the examples. Life cycle of a butterfly, life cycle of a fish, life cycle of a frog, or any other living organism. And the third type of process is the natural cycle. So when you have the natural cycle, it would be things like the rock cycle we saw, soil formation, maybe water cycle, nitrogen cycle, oxygen cycle, and so on. So these are the three types of processes that you have to be familiar with, and in your IELTS writing, any one of these could appear. So in today's video, we will pick one out of this, which, as you can see on screen, is a fish pie production line, which simply means it's a mechanical process. So let's see how we can answer this mechanical process. Well, certain things to keep in mind when answering such a question. Number one, what is the tense form you have to use? So the grammar concepts. Let's cover the grammar concepts that you have to keep in mind first. We stick on to the simple present form of the tense. Now, of course, what we see is a production of fish pie, but this is over, the process is complete. But that doesn't mean they don't produce fish pie anymore. So this is a regular cyclic process, which is why we stick on to the simple present tense. At the same time, when it comes to grammar point, there's another thing you have to keep in mind. That is, when you construct sentences, use the passive voice or the passive construction of sentences. So these are the two grammar points you have to keep in mind. Passive construction simply means we give focus on the object and not on the subject. Here, who did the action is not important, because very often in a mechanical process, the action is done by a machine. So we don't focus on the subject here, but on the object or on the action that is happening. So we focus on the object and the action more. That is why we use the passive voice while describing a process diagram, a mechanical process diagram. What else should you keep in mind? Great. So after grammar, which is the first aspect we saw, let's focus on the vocabulary to keep in mind. Now when it comes to vocabulary, you have to think of words to show sequence. So sequential markers. So words to show sequence or order in which it happens. For instance, if you look at this fish pie production line, what do we see? Well, we can see that there is a delivery here, but there is also a delivery given here. Now we can see one line of process happening here. There is another line of process here. And then the store or the dispatch, which is the final stage, is here. So going through this, what we understand is this one first shows the delivery of potatoes and how it is processed. Second is the delivery of fresh salmon and how it is processed. Now the processing of fresh salmon reaches up to here. You can see the arrow mark given, right? It shows this direction, which means it goes from the fresh salmon to the prepared sauce. Potatoes also move in the same direction. From the initial raw potato stage to the process stage, it enters or it reaches the processed salmon as well, and the potatoes and the processed salmon together goes to the stage, which is the wrapping stage. Then you can see the freezing and the dispatch happening. So sequence or order, words to show that. which means you can use words like first, next, second, later, after that, followed by this, finally, eventually, and so on. So be prepared with sequence markers as well. And also be prepared with the right action words or verbs. For instance, what is the action happening here? You can see the word clean. So we know it's the cleaning of the potatoes. What is happening in the second step? Peeling. Then we have slice. We have boil. So we have words given in this particular diagram, but some diagrams may not have words written around it, which means we look at the image, understand what's happening, and then we have to insert the action words. So under vocabulary, focus on the sequence markers and the right verbs. Having said this, having looked at the grammar aspect and the vocabulary aspect of the task, let's see how we can answer this question. So here probably we can, let's say, after the introduction, of course, the overview, the body paragraphs can be divided based on how the process is happening here. For instance, I could choose to divide the first step in the first body paragraph and the thing regarding fresh salmon in the second body paragraph up to the delivery. Okay, so look at the process. Where do you think you can split them into two halves? Accordingly, you can decide. Depending on the number of steps, we also have to decide on the number of sequence markers we use. So we begin with delivery. Then I can say that this is the first step, second. Okay, so count the total number of stages. Here 1, 2, maybe I can club them as well. Peeling, slicing and boiling as 2, 3, 4. Then we have a second body again where we see another process happening. So simultaneous processes. So here we have again first step, second, third, 4 together and 5 wrap along with this. Then we speak about this stage, and here we can use the word final. So if I say first, second, I can say later, I can say next, I can say then, and regarding the processing of salmon, I can again use words because I've used first here. I can say initially, later, followed by this, and so on. So decide on the sequence markers. The verbs are already given here in the image. So a lot of our contributions are not required here. And then as we discussed, focus on the grammar aspect. So we use the simple present tense but the passive construction. So how do we do that? For instance, look at this first stage, cleaning of potatoes. So I use the word first and I say first, comma, potatoes, plural, not singular but plural. So potatoes are, and I have to focus on the verb clean. Because it is the passive construction, I have to use the past participle form of this verb. First, potatoes are cleaned. And second, okay, I'm connecting it because see second, and second, these cleaned potatoes, are, now the past participle of the word slice, are sliced, full stop. So this is an example of a passive construction. So what are the grammar aspects I have focused here? One, yes, the passive, and I'm also using the present. So is or are depending on the number. If I'm talking about a single potato, I would say first, a potato is cleaned, and second, this cleaned potato is sliced. But here, because it's plural, I'm using are. So I'm focusing on the simple present, plus I'm using the passive construction, because here I'm focusing on the object, which is the potato, and the verb, which is the action, cleaned, not on who does the cleaning, right? And I've also used the sequence markers we've spoken about. First, second, the verbs here, clean or slice. So all of it that we've discussed is given in this example as sentences here. So I hope you've understood what you should do when it comes to describing a process diagram. Now, let's look at a structure. Because it's a report writing, we start off with what is the introduction. So our first paragraph will be the introduction. So in the introduction, all you need to do is paraphrase the question. So whatever the question is, reword it. For instance, I might write something like, the given diagram depicts, and I need to complete it. Like the given diagram depicts the production of fish pie, or the given diagram depicts the production of fresh orange juice. Okay, so that is my introduction. The second paragraph will be the overview. So I need to write down what the main aspects are of the question here. And for that, because it's a process diagram, I focus on the total number of stages. How many stages can be seen in the production of a fish pie or in the production of fresh orange juice? Maybe I can say there are a total of 10 stages, or fish pie is produced in 15 stages or 15 different steps. I can also add where the process begins and where it ends. So this becomes my second paragraph. My third and fourth paragraphs are the body paragraphs. So we've already discussed that, how we can divide the body paragraphs. You look at the number of steps that you can see and just divide them into two halves. Okay, so this is a rough structure that you can follow for a mechanical process diagram, and the overall structure can be used for any other process as well. Now it's your time to share a sample response. Get back to our fish pie production image and share a sample of the response based on what we've discussed in this video. I'll be eager to check your examples. So looking forward to reading your samples in our comment section. Thank you.
MedCity International Academy. Trusted hands forever.